Whew, Psalm 68. I wanted to end with Psalm 68 because Psalm 50 can feel kind of like a downer, but Psalm 68 then shows the opposite side, the deliverance. It's the deliverance. I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, let me get it on my notes here. David prophesies about the procession of Israel's messianic king and the path that he takes, similar to when they came out of Egypt. The messianic king takes this path again from Sinai to Zion, freeing captives as he goes and defeating Israel's adversaries as the messianic age is inaugurated. Ooh, it's hope. It's another depiction of Psalm 45. So, oh my goodness. All right, excuse my drinking there. Here we go. I'm about to lose my voice, so I appreciate everybody bearing with me. Oh, I love this. God shall arise, and his enemies shall be scattered. This is like a certainty. This is a promise. This is not up for discussion. God shall arise. His enemies shall be scattered, and those who hate him will flee before him. As smoke is driven away, so you shall drive them away. As wax melts before fire, so the wicked shall perish before God. Again, you can just sense, again, it's the effortlessness, the complete ineffectiveness of God's adversaries to resist them. They melt like little flakes of wax at his coming. They're driven away like puffs of smoke, just poof, and they dissipate into nothing. Oh, wow. It's a total comprehensive victory. It's amazing. And then, but the righteous will be glad and they'll exult before the Lord. You have these two experiences. Again, we've just had this appeal of you can either inherit destruction or inherit eternal blessing. And that was in the end of Psalm 50 with David's appeal there at the end. But here we see the difference in the outcomes. Those who have chosen enmity, poof, like smoke. But those who have stood with God and his purposes, the righteous will be glad and they will exult before the Lord. They'll be jubilant with joy at his coming. Something really special happens to those righteous survivors. And that's quite a bit of foreshadowing that we look at in later passages. David is not specifically describing the rapture, but other passages will. And so the righteous at his coming have this just jubilant joy and this amazing stuff that happens. And as the Messiah comes into Zion, that's what's being described here in chapter 68. Okay, cool. Sing to God, sing praises to his name, lift up a song, him who rides through the deserts. Oh, it's the rider again, the rider of Psalm 45, the one who rides through the desert. Literally, he does do a path riding through the desert as described here into Zion, through the southern part of Jerusalem up to Zion. Should say the southern part of Israel up to Zion. His name is the Lord. Exult before him. Now, this is a little interesting. His name is the Lord. David is identifying the rider as God himself. And very few, almost no, rabbis that I talk to or Jewish scholars of the Old Testament will admit that the messianic figure is divine. They would say he's divine in his empowering, if they believe in a messianic figure at all. If the messianic figure, a lot of times in their mind, it is Israel. But that wouldn't make sense because Israel's in need of deliverance. And so how can Israel deliver itself? It just becomes a circular argument. There is an external, individual messianic figure who David is saying is divine, not just in his empowering, like he's empowered by God, but he is divine. And from a New Testament perspective, that makes a lot more sense. But from an Old Testament perspective, there's just a link there that's not always fully connected. David does connect it very specifically. Later prophets will as well, but this is one of the first times where that connection is really strongly made. Apart from maybe, I don't know, you can make an argument for it in Psalm 2. But anyway, this is that Psalm 2. Here he comes, the king into Zion. Father of the fatherless and protector of widows is God in his holy habitation. Can you see that? Let me scroll up so that it's not going away from you. Father to the fatherless. Why do we get all this father to the fatherless? Well, Israel, at the time when they're being delivered, has been scattered. They are being hunted. If we remember Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy 28, they're scattered, and honestly, a lot of the men have been killed. At this point, when Israel is going through tribulation, a lot of the men have been killed. And so this is practical. This is literal practical. He will be father to the fatherless, protector of widows, is God in his holy habitation. God settles the solitary. Again, it's a lot of these families that have been separated and scattered, some of them killed, some of them finding each other. It's, almost back to the Holocaust level. It's honestly exceeds Holocaust level type of destruction. But the answer is this deliverer who sets up an everlasting kingdom. And that's what we're talking about here in 68. I'm just trying to link the context as we go through. But God will settle the solitary in a home. That's very practical. It's actually really meaningful in that day, more so than just reading it and thinking, oh, that's nice. No, actually, seriously, the solitary are going to need homes. He leads out the prisoners to prosperity. Again, the captives, those who've been taken captive that are referenced in Leviticus 26. Look at this. He leads the prisoners to prosperity. The messianic figure is going on his journey into Zion, but he's releasing captives. He's freeing the prisoners as he proceeds into Zion. He's bringing prisoners with him who he has set free along the path. It's fascinating. So literal prisoners being brought to prosperity. If you thought the Isaiah 60 promise of freeing the captives was just figurative or symbolic, it's not. It's literal. And here it is. He leads prisoners to prosperity, but the rebellious will dwell in a parched land. I don't have to get too far into that, but that is the parched land that Moses refers to as a land of perpetual desolation in Deuteronomy 29, verses 18 through 28. I reference that in the notes. So if you have the notes, I point that out. Deuteronomy 29 is this land that the rebellious inherit. That's a land of destruction, a perpetual destruction. And that's what David's referencing here. It starts with Deuteronomy 29, but David is following along. Will dwell in a parched land of perpetual desolation. Okay, scrolling up. Oh yeah, verse 7, you can see it. Oh God, when your people went out oh God, when you went out before your people, when your people marched through the wilderness. David is going to recount God delivering his people from Egypt and the journey that they took to Sinai. This is kind of referencing history, saying the earth quaked and the heavens poured down rain. Again, you've got the pillar of fire, the cloud by day, and the earth quaked, the heavens poured out their rain, as God would literally bring rain over the people of Israel in the wilderness just to sustain them. It says, before God, the one of Sinai, and before God now, the God of Israel. The same thing, the same God that's coming into Zion is the God of Sinai, and Sinai is now coming to Zion. It's incredible. Rain and abundance, O God, you shed abroad, you restored your inheritance as it languished. Again, this is back in the wilderness time, but also now as refugees are being regathered to Israel. Your rain is going to sustain them. They're going to restore their inheritance. The inheritance in this sense is not just the land and the possessions, but it's actually the people, saying you restored your inheritance. And God's inheritance is the people, the bride, the inheritance as they languished. Your flock found a dwelling in it. Again, he's sheltering his people. In your goodness, you provided for the needy. The Lord God gives the word. Sorry, I'm going to scroll up for you so you can make sure to see that. The Lord gives the word and the women announce it. Now, this little section in verses 11 through 14 are really difficult to translate. A lot of commentators are all over the place, and they say, apart from the end of Ezekiel, Psalm 68 has some sections that are just really hard to translate accurately and thereby interpret accurately. So there's a lot of different opinions about what this little section means. I'll give my opinion and what I've studied just so that you can see it there. But the Lord gives the word, and the women who announce the news are a great host. Now, I think that can mean both. When he's saying the women who announced it are a great host, that's great, because I do think that there are women, there are prophetesses who are meant to be prophesying in this day. But I think it also has to do with the women who announce it are a great host, in part because a lot of the men have been killed. Remember, he's father to the fatherless and the protector of the widows, because a lot of the men have been killed. And likewise, this is a similar scenario. There's just not a lot of men left. And so the women are announcing this great news. The armies, the kings of the armies, this is the rebellious kings of Psalm 2, they flee. They're out. Get rid of them. They're fleeing. They're destroyed. And the women are dividing the spoils. Though you young men lie among the sheepfolds, the wings of a dove covered with silver, its pinions with shimmering gold. And everybody is like, what in the world does this language mean? But I do have a Bible teacher that I follow named Joel Richardson. Shout out to Joel. He's great. But he has a little bit of a thought on this young men lying among the sheepfolds. I mentioned it in the notes, but the literal Hebrew for the sheepfolds, it looks a lot like the title for the location of Basra. The Basra in Hebrew, it's like the Hebrew consonants for Basra literally translate to the sheep pen. And that's located in a valley surrounded by mountains. And it is in the path of Sinai. It's in the path of the journey from Sinai to Zion. And so to say that there are captives in Basra would be accurate, but that's a little bit of reading into the poetic language that David is using. If you were to say the young men who are held captive in Basra will be like wings of doves covered with silver and pinions with shimmering gold. All that to say, the captives are being led out victoriously, and their fortunes are being restored. They're experiencing a miraculous, supernatural restoration and strengthening, and more prophets will talk about that. David is just alluding to it here in this bit of Psalm 68. The Almighty scatters kings there. Let the snow fall on Zaman. I don't totally know about that mountain, and a lot of commentators were a little bit confused about that too, so I'm not going to try to force knowing what that means. Okay, 15. O mountain of God, mountain of Bashan. Yeah, Bashan. O many-peaked mountain, O mountain of Bashan. Now, the mountain of Bashan kind of represents a couple of things. The Mount Zion is the eternal dwelling. It's God's exalted mountain, but Bashan is kind of a mountain ridge region in the northern part of Jordan. And it is figurative. It's kind of symbolic of this confederation of wicked kings. It's this many-peaked mountain. It's this many-peaked this confederation of leaders who are basically opposing Israel that are being represented by this mountain of Bashan. It's kind of representative for that. Why do you look with hatred, O many-peaked mountain? Again, all these other international leaders at the mountain that God desires, that he's chosen as his abode, where he'll dwell forever. Now, again, there's kind of a cool question, but there's also a promise there that Zion is the chosen mountain that will be exalted over every other mountain, and it is the mountain that God desires for his dwelling forever. And because of that choice, because God has chosen Zion as his eternal dwelling, the rest of the mountain ridge, the rest of the leaders are jealous and angry. They hate that mountain. Why do you look on with hatred? And they hate that mountain. So, let me scroll down so I'm catching myself. The chariots of God are twice 10,000, thousands upon thousands. Is the Lord among them? Sinai is now in the sanctuary. The glory of Sinai is now in Zion, and there's covenant fulfillment happening like no other time. It's that completion and culmination of the covenant. It is beautiful, and that thousands upon thousands is both an angelic host And if we read a little bit into Paul's commentary on this scenario, it's resurrected saints. Resurrected saints are among this host. A beautiful, beautiful thing. But again, that's reading into it a little bit. David's point is this great host of angels and captives who are being restored, this mighty army that is thousands upon thousands, angels and people. You ascend on high, talking about ascending the high mountain of Zion, the highest of all the mountains. The Messiah ascends Zion, leading a host of freed captives in his train, literally, as he's come, maybe even through Basra, specifically, as we talked about, through the south of Israel to Zion. He's leading his freed captives behind him with this angelic host with him, and they're receiving gifts. There's this great procession, even among the rebellious, that the Lord God may dwell there. Oh, there's just this huge celebration that is the inauguration of the Messianic age. It is the Psalm 45 wedding, celebration, all those kind of things. Again, blessed be the Lord who daily bears us up. Now, this is kind of talking to the captives who are being restored. Blessed is the Lord who daily bears us up. God is our salvation. Our God is the God of salvation. And God, the Lord, to God, the Lord, belongs deliverance even from death. You have this defeat of death that's happening that sounds a little bit like this eternal inheritance and resurrection that's happening right then. But again, we'll leave that for later commentary in other authors. But God will strike down the heads of his enemies. So there's the deliverance that's happening and simultaneous restoration right at that moment, the end right there. This is what becomes known as the day of the Lord. And not just a broad generation or period, but this is the day, the deliverance and victory of the Messiah and restoration of Israel. The Lord said, I will bring them back from Bashan, all the captives that have gone to all those other nations. I'll bring them back from even the depths of the sea, that you may strike your heel in their blood, and the tongues of your dogs may have their portion from your foe. That's a little bit brutal, but basically talking about this just absolute victory over Israel's victories, over Israel's enemies. Literally, they're slain. There are armies that are slain, and as the captives are brought back, they're stepping over all of the kind of bloodshed that took place as they're making their way back into Israel toward Zion. And even the captives who participate in the battle strike their feet. And again, the striking of the feet sounds a lot like the crushing of the skull from Genesis 3, if you remember that. But basically, they're involved. The captives are involved in the victory, in the military victory, as Israel's enemies are slain. And that's just a little depiction of even the captives returning to Zion are having to step over the corpses and all that kind of thing. Okay. Your procession is seen, O God. Scrolling up. I do appreciate the mention of the dogs. I love dogs. I don't imagine my dog is doing that in verse 23 there. But anyway, all right, scrolling up. Your procession is seen, O God, the procession of my God, my King, into the sanctuary. This is beautiful. Here's the moment. The King is coming into Zion. The marriage is being consummated, all of the things, covenant fulfillment to the max. And what's interesting is that David saw a foreshadowing of this when he brought the ark into Jerusalem. If you look at 2 Samuel, do I have it in the notes? 2 Samuel. Surely I mentioned this in here. We got to go all the way down. Yeah, 2 Samuel 6. When David is bringing the ark into Jerusalem, remember David is dancing and there's this massive celebration that really is a reflection of this. And David gets criticized by one of Saul's daughters. He says, you're dancing so foolishly. And he's like, you don't even know. There's going to be a way greater celebration, and I will be even more undignified than this in that day. And I wonder if, as David is saying that, if he's picturing this, if this is the vision that he's thinking of when he says, there will be a much greater celebration, and I will dance even crazier at this time. Your procession is seen. Again, they're coming into the sanctuary. The singers are in front. The musicians are at the end. And the virgins are playing their tambourines. Blessed Bless God in the great congregation. This is the song. He actually gives us a little song in verse 26. I don't know how it goes, but the lyrics are, bless God in the great congregation, the Lord, O you who are of Israel, O you who are of Israel's fountain. There's Benjamin, the last of them, in the lead, and the prince of Judah in their throng, and the princes of Zebulun, and it goes on. Basically, this whole procession and great restoration and redemption, and the covenant is being fulfilled. That's kind of the general idea. Then comes this prayer. It kind of shifts a little bit in verse 28. This is a prayer for this to happen, for the deliverer to come into Zion. Comes this prayer. He says, summon your power. This is David kind of praying for all this to come to pass. And it's a prayer that's given for believers to pray in the midst of the tribulation. When the tribulation is happening and we need the deliverer to come and for this procession to happen, for the captives to be set free, this is the prayer. Summon your power, O God. The power, O God, by which you've worked for us. All the way back to Egypt, he's calling on that power, on that God. Because of your temple at Jerusalem, kings will bear gifts to you. Rebuke the beasts that dwell among the reeds and the herds of bulls with calves of the people. Trample underfoot those who lust after tribute. Scatter the people who delight in war. And nobles will come from Egypt. Cush shall hasten to stretch out her hands to God. This huge prayer of just, God, summon your power. Come do this procession. Send your Messiah and accomplish your covenant purposes and your restoration. Rebuke the enemies and those who delight in war, all these things. And he actually gives us mention of Egypt and Cush, which would be more like modern day northeastern Africa, the area of Ethiopia. He references that Egypt and in modern kind of Ethiopia area are going to be among the first kind of early allies of the Messianic age. They're going to be allies who participate in this celebration. The nobles from surrounding kings who align themselves with the covenant are going to participate and be early participants in the Messianic age. It's so cool. Just as a promise for that region, that the whole region is not just doomed to destruction, but there are those who align themselves with God's covenant for Israel who are honored and who participate in this celebration. I love it. And so it's a prayer just as much for them, a prayer for Egypt and that northeastern part of Africa. I love that. Later prophets are going to reference them specifically. If I think of Isaiah 19 or 18 and 19, Isaiah is going to elaborate on that one verse 31. It's very, very cool. We'll get into that though. We're going to cover it, I promise, in a future week. And finally, the very last segment, the nations respond. Let me scroll down so that I get it all for you. As we prepare to close the stream, we've gone through a lot. The nations of the earth sing to God. They respond to what they've seen. The nations around the earth responding to what has transpired in the Middle East specifically. A lot of the end time drama is concentrated to the region of the Middle East, but it ripples across the rest of the earth. And the kingdoms of the earth sing to God, to him who rides in the heavens. The rider, it's the rider again of Psalm 45. The victorious rider who rides from the heavens, rides through the deserts, the ancient heavens. Behold, he sends out his voice, his mighty voice. Ascribe power to God, whose majesty is over Israel and whose power is in the skies. Like David is seeing the fulfillment of all of this, and he is just issuing this huge call to worship. It's a beautiful depiction of just the overflow of the fulfilled promises of Leviticus 26, Deuteronomy 28, Deuteronomy 32, what we talked about, Psalm 2 at the end, some of the other ones we've looked at. Awesome is God from his sanctuary. And he's literally talking about the Messiah reigning in Jerusalem. Awesome is God and his presence in the sanctuary, the God of Israel. He is the one who gives power and strength to his people. Blessed be God. Isn't that awesome? When the God of Sinai is dwelling in Zion, what a huge promise and hope for us to pray for, to believe in, to have our hopes set in. It's beautiful. So that's Psalm 68.